Now we left a small problem in one of the components that we just created earlier. And so let's now go fix that problem and in the process discover the problem of prop drilling. But before we go do that, I just want to very quickly review the previous lecture by classifying each of our components into one of the categories that we just looked at. So I think that clearly both the app and the navbar component here are structural components. So they're only responsible for the structure or for the layout of the application. And the same can also be said of this main component here. So those are for providing structure. Then the logo here is clearly a presentational component, so it doesn't have any state, and so therefore it's stateless, and it simply presents some content here. Then the search is of course a stateful component. Then numResults is just a presentational component here. Main we already talked about. Then we have the list box, which clearly is a stateful component. And the same for the movie list and for the watched box. So those are all stateful components, while the movie simply receives this prop right here and then presents that data in the user interface. And so movie here is just a stateless or presentational component. Then we have this one here, which is also a presentational component. And the same for this one. So watched movies list and watched movie. All right, and that's actually it. I just wanted to quickly categorize each of them. But now let's move on to that problem that I mentioned in the very beginning. And that is that right now, here we are not dynamically calculating the number of results. So we are not basically taking the list of movies and reading how many there are and then displaying it here. So that's what we want to do. But yeah, now we only have this X. So what we need basically is to get access to the movies state right here in numResults. Now, where does that state live right now? Well, it's here inside of movies list. So right here. So again, it's here, but we also need it here in numResults. So what's the solution to that? And I really hope you already know at this point. Well, the solution is to lift the state up to the closest parent component. And what parent is that? Well, it's the app component, right? So it's not the navbar, because of course that's not a parent of movie list, and so it is really the app component. So what we need to do is to cut this from here and place it right back into the app component. All right, and now we need to pass it down as a prop to where we need it. And so this is where the problem of prop drilling will come into play. So again, we need now this state in order to make this work again inside of the movie list. But this movie list is really deeply nested inside this component tree, right? So it has these two parent components, which now will also need to receive that state as a prop. But instead of talking, let's actually do this. So movies equals movies. So now we have the movies array inside main. So let's go there. And we need to receive it here. And then we need to pass it here right into the watched box, or actually into the list box. So movies equal movies. Or actually here, yeah, it's not main, of course, it's movies. Okay, so now we got it inside the main, and now we got it inside the list box. So let's come here and do it all again. So accepting it here, and then passing it here. So movies equal movies. And so what we are doing right now is what we call prop drilling. So now we finally accept it here, and then it works again. So basically prop drilling means that we need to pass some prop through several nested child components in order to get that data into some deeply nested component, which in this case is this one. So we had to pass this movies prop here first into the main, then, well, from the main into the list box, and then from the list box into the movie list. And so all these components, they didn't actually even need this prop. All they needed this for was to then pass it down even further the tree. And so we end up with a lot of props that are really not needed at all. All they are needed for is to pass the data down even further into our component tree. So this is what prop drilling is. And you saw that it is not a lot of fun, and it could be even worse, of course, if the data was nested even deeper into the tree. So this was just like 3 levels deep, but it could be like 5 or 10 levels. And so then it would become a little bit out of control. So we will look at ways of fixing prop drilling a bit later in this section, but for now, let's finally also make this prop, so this movies data, available right here where we also need it. So right here. So movies equal movies. And so now we have to do some prop drilling again, because here we need to again accept this prop, but we don't need it here. All we need it for is to pass it down again. But here it's not so bad because it's really just one level. Okay, and now finally movies dot length. And so, ta-da, we got 3 results. Nice. So this works, and what we just did here is a perfectly valid solution to make the application work, of course. But as I mentioned, what we did was some so-called prop drilling, which is not always the best solution, especially if we need to pass that prop down really, really deep into the tree. And so in the next lecture, we will take a look at one of the possible solutions to this problem, which is component composition.